Hi everyone, welcome to today's session. I was actually trying to use another program that I was using during pandemic times, but I couldn't use it anymore. And now I'm going to record myself using Zoom. Hopefully it works amazing. I was telling the other day, Catherine, that I couldn't get the chance to record myself because I forgot it. I completely forgot it. But that's why I'm going to share with you, to prepare with you this video and share it with you. Yes, that's it. So hopefully this is recorded perfectly. The sound is okay. So let's start working. I'm going to share with you the presentation, which we started last Monday. Just give me a minute. And also, I would like to say that I'm going to apologize if I have to pause myself because I'm expecting a phone call, which is very important. And if I pause myself, I'm really sorry. Hopefully, they let us work peacefully today during this presentation. So we were discussing what it's called a learner-centered teaching. Let me make myself a little bit smaller. Here it is. Okay, here it is. And this is a timeline, okay, that starts from the 60s. We were talking about some social movements in the 60s. We got to the point of the 70s, and that was it. So we are going from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and the beginning of this millennium. So we already discussed this about the area of applied linguistics, what a pupil was in the past, and how language classrooms became differently in the 60s because we started to receive people from all over the world, especially in the US. The US started to receive a lot of immigrants from all over the world, and all those immigrants have to learn English. And all of a sudden, teachers, language teachers, English teachers, were in spaces where they have to teach English to a bunch of nationalities, right? Um, According to me, we got to the point of development of psycholinguistics and social linguistics, which are two branches from linguistics, as we were mentioning. And now we are going to talk about the acquisition of language skills. If you remember, there are 4 language skills that we teach when we are teaching any language, which is reading, writing, listening, and speaking, right? These language skills should go also with the teaching of culture, phonetics, and vocabulary, as well as grammar. These 4 aspects are very important in any language class. Now, in the 70s, it was the beginning of the communicative approach as a proposal. Uh, what I would like you to understand, in other classes in the past, we have discussed the communicative approach, which the main goal was communication, speaking. Basically, language schools were focused on people learning how to communicate, basically acquiring all the tools to communicate and have conversations, and also use the language in presentations, for example, at their jobs. So the communicative approach was rising, it was becoming very popular, but also the idea of construction of knowledge. If you remember the example that I gave you in Italian, if you remember, I was giving you the example of the verb mi chiamo. I think, I don't remember the exact example in Italian, but remember that when we say that we construct knowledge, it's basically instead of giving knowledge per se, just like so easily, deliver it to a student so easily, we are trying to construct the language, we are trying to construct the rules, and our main goal is that students also are involved actively in this construction. So We, the teachers, as guidance, we are there to guide them with our materials, with our knowledge, and they, through some clues and through some information, they discover language and they create hypotheses, remember? Now, another important aspect in the 70s was the humanistic teaching. Humanistic teaching is basically a model of teaching where I recognize myself as a human being, the teacher, but I also recognize the people that are in front of me, which are my students, as human beings. That means that I'm a human, I make mistakes, I have my needs, and I'm not only Andrea the teacher, I'm also Andrea the daughter, Andrea the friend. I am Andrea the citizen in Querétaro, right? So my students are also citizens, friends, daughters, sons, etc. So this means that even when we are only involved with our students in an academic environment, it means that if we are taking into account the humanistic approach, is that I understand that sometimes at school, my students could have problems related to their personal lives. Myself as a teacher too. I could have emotional problems, they could have emotional problems. And even when we say we have to be professional, we have to act professional, yeah, that is the main goal. However, sometimes it's not possible. So if for some reason I end up feeling really bad one day as a teacher, I'm sure that if I am used to have this kind of relationship which is close to my students, where I as a teacher listen to their needs and they also listen to me back, we could have sometimes problems, personal issues where sometimes we don't feel okay. And if we have a conversation, if we have an honest dialogue, I think the teacher could understand and also the students could understand. This is not about making excuses. This is not about I didn't do my homework and I need you to receive it. It's not about that. It's actually about understanding, supporting, and being aware that we all are living in a society and we are sharing the same space, academically speaking, and we are there. Me for my students, but also my students are there for me. Yes, act professionally. Yes, always give your best. Yes, you are the adult. The teacher is the adult. Yes, I understand that sharing emotions as a teacher sometimes is condemned, is not understood. Uh, but we are not perfect. It's actually the humanistic approach is about not being robots, not acting as if we were machines. We are people with feelings, with different circumstances in life. That's it. In this faculty, in Lenguas y Letras, I always say that we are very emotional, that we are very sensitive. And you know what makes us so emotional and so sensitive besides life? Our area, our area of expertise, which is teaching. What is teaching? Being in contact with humans, with others. Linguistics, what is it? Understanding how humans communicate using words. Literature, what is literature? It's art expressed with words, feelings expressed in words, life expressed using words. Translation, making humans, making people understand each other. That's why I love working in this faculty, and I feel very proud about being part of this faculty, not only as a student in the past, but also as a teacher in the present. So that's the humanistic approach about a little bit. and more specifically about these following points, which is the negotiated curriculum. The curriculum, if you remember, we were discussing that it's basically all the subjects that are part, all the contents that are part of one program. For example, a university degree. I gave you the example of the curriculum in Lenguas Modernas en Inglés, right? Which is all the subjects with all its contents. When I say negotiated, it means that for example, our curriculum in Lenguas Modernas en Inglés, it's kind of negotiated with the students because even when in our curriculum, for example, we have a subject and we have the contents that we should teach, we can change maybe one or two, we can exchange a couple of contents according to my students' needs. I can even add more contents, the ones that I consider important, or my students and I could have a conversation. That's why it's called a negotiation, because through conversations, we actually get the chance to share what I, the teacher, think it's important for you, but also what you, students, think it's important for you to learn during the semester, during the course, during the degree. So how is the negotiation done? Through dialogues, through sharing our thoughts. So that's why it's part of the humanistic approach. The needs analysis, every time we start a new class with a new group, the first couple of classes, we sit with our students and we make a needs analysis. A needs analysis is also a concept that is very famous in business, in the business degree, in the business areas, which basically through an analysis, I write down everything that my clients or my students need. For example, if I see that my group is mixed level, I should make a note about this and make sure that through the course, through the semester, I try to solve this problem. Or, for example, if I notice that their speaking is very low or that their reading abilities are not so sharp, maybe through some strategies, through some exercises, through some practice during my semester, I could help them improve on these skills. So that's a needs analysis, okay? Also part of the humanistic approach. Self-assessment, if you remember, we were discussing assessment, which is also a synonym of evaluation. Evaluation is a very important aspect in any course in education. If we don't evaluate, we cannot actually know if our students are reaching the goals that we proposed in the beginning of the course. Remember that every time we start a course, through the needs analysis and through the conversation that I have with my students, I present the syllabus, which is el programa en español. The syllabus I presented, and we make negotiations, I make the needs analysis, and also I present the evaluation part. But one important aspect about the syllabus is my goals. My goals is basically what I'm trying to I'm trying to reach, not only in knowledge, but also, if you remember in our syllabus, we have competencias, ¿cómo se llamaban? Competencias en cuanto a las herramientas, todo lo que viene en nuestro programa como competencias son todos los que serían considerados como nuestros objetivos. In the past, they were called objectives or goals. Now they are called competences, at least in the Mexican educational system, okay? So if I don't have that very clear, if I don't have my goals very clear since the very beginning, there's no way that by the end of the course, by the end of the semester, I can know if my students reached those goals. And how do I know if they reached those goals? Through evaluation, through assessment. Remember that evaluations are not only done written. I can also have oral evaluations. I can have so many types of evaluations, but in Mexico, most commonly they are written, right? Like exams, basically. Self-assessment is a very good idea, actually, because it's a tool that I present to my students and they have to self-evaluate. However, even though it's a very recommended tool, I don't think that in Mexico we are prepared for self-assessment because for self-assessment to work, we should be using this tool since elementary school, middle school, probably, because you have to be very honest. You have to know why you are evaluating yourself, what you are evaluating, and all the pros and cons about this. I don't think we are ready in Mexico, honestly. Learner training refers to all the learning strategies that we were mentioning a couple of classes ago. So basically, what my students need from me, what my students need from me in the sense of all the knowledge that I have. For example, how should I mm, how should I let them know that they could learn better? Remember? For example, let's suppose that I see that my students are having a hard time with listening. So if I start observing their behaviors and how they perform on listening activities, I could make notes, I could make an analysis, and I could come close to them and tell them, listen, I've seen that you do this, and this, and I would recommend you to do this instead of this because I think that you could work better this way. I think it would be better for you. So through these conversations, I think that we could improve our students' learning, okay? That's about learner training, training our students to become better at learning. Motivation is a topic that we have already mentioned, as well as learners' autonomy, okay? That is in the 70s. Now, in the 80s, um, we have the development of what is called learner-centered teaching, as well as other different learning strategies. But this was just like a proposal in education to start having some changes. Now, notice, this was first proposed in the 80s, it was developed in the 80s, and it started to be implemented in the 90s. Now, I would like to show you something. Let me just Google it because I forgot it. There's something in WAC called MEU. MEU, let me see if you are seeing what I'm seeing. You be patient with me, please. Yes, I think you are seeing what I'm seeing. Okay, if you Google MEU WAC, you are going to find Modelo Educativo Universitario. MEU stands for Modelo Educativo Universitario. Okay, let me go back to you. Sorry, I think that my camera was paused. As I was telling you, yes, we are here in MEU. Okay, let me go back over here. Yes, we're here. Okay, Modelo Educativo Universitario basically is the educational proposal that was published, well, around 2018, I think, 2017. And this is like the small version of the whole document. But basically what they are saying is that we teach, at least in WAC, with this educational model. Oh my God, my camera paused again. Let me go back. What's happening? Okay, we are back. I don't know what's happening. Anyways, I was telling you, we have Meo, and if we get closer to this one, this is basically a summary of what it is about. And Meo is divided into three main points, which is principios y valores. Dice que nosotros nos dirigimos con principios y valores humanistas, which is what I'm saying actually, the humanistic approach, remember? Con compromiso social y sustentable. Nuestros programas de estudio son humanistas, con compromiso social y sustentable. En cuanto a la innovación educativa, dice que nosotros proponemos todo el tiempo nuevas modalidades de enseñanza, planes de estudio actualizados. If you remember, we were mentioning that Licenciatura en Lenguas Modernas en Inglés was last updated in 2018. So that was basically 5 years ago, okay? So it's very updated. Y que hacemos uso de las tecnologías de información y comunicación, just like what we are doing now on Zoom. And our programs are, sorry, I'm switching. Nuestros programas están vinculados con la sociedad a través de la innovación educativa. Si nos vamos al enfoque pedagógico, que es el círculo naranja, dice que nuestro enfoque pedagógico está centrado en el aprendizaje. Si ustedes recuerdan, nuestro tema que estamos ahorita discutiendo es Student-Centered Learning, and in Spanish es aprendizaje centrado en el estudiante o centrado en el aprendizaje, ¿no? Precisamente. Entonces, justo lo que estamos viendo ahorita, que en todo el mundo se empezó a desarrollar en los 80s, aquí en la UAC, no aquí en la UAC, más bien en México, todas las tendencias educativas siempre tienden a tardar en llegar aquí en nuestro país, no solo a nuestro país, sino como a toda Latinoamérica. Bueno, excepto por Brasil, porque Brasil es muy activo en cuanto a las propuestas pedagógicas que hacen. Bueno, el segundo punto es desde el aprendizaje significativo. If you remember, we also discussed meaningful learning. Como ven, está muy de moda en los temas educativos. Nuestros programas son flexibles. ¿Se acuerdan que les decía yo que nuestro mapa curricular de la licenciatura es flexible, ya que ustedes pueden tomar materias o ustedes pueden dar de alta unas materias por otras, o sea, cambiar unas materias, tomar otras y así poder complementar su formación universitaria. Y dice que pues nuestro modelo es multi, inter y transdisciplinario. ¿Qué significa? Que entre las disciplinas que con las que cuenta la UAC, por ejemplo, tenemos lenguas y letras con nuestra facultad, o no sé, ciencias naturales, podemos hacer trabajos multidisciplinarios, interdisciplinarios, transdisciplinarios, donde colaboremos entre las áreas y podamos hacer cosas nuevas de forma más completa, compleja e integral. Les quería enseñar esto porque esto es de casa y se deberían de sentir, ¿cómo se dice? Identificados, identificadas con este modelo pedagógico que es el que usamos actualmente en la UAC. Quizás no en todas las materias lo sientan como tan presente, pero de forma, digamos que global, esa es la propuesta que nosotros tenemos. Learner-centered teaching is effective in language learning because it is sensitive to individual needs and preferences. Because you have discussions with your students, right? Through discussions and dialogues, you talk to them about the importance of adding extra contents, changing some contents, etc. It encourages construction of knowledge and meaning, as I was saying. Instead of just delivering the contents, you build the knowledge with your students. It draws on and integrates language learning with students' life experiences, which makes all the learning experiences meaningful. It generates more students' participation and target language output. Basically, since you make your students feel comfortable, they are going to participate more, and through these participations, they are going to produce the language more. It's working again. Thank you very much. I don't know why it's not working. As I was telling you about producing the language, learner-centered teaching encourages authentic communication because it's meaningful, because it goes according to students' needs. It breaks down barriers between in-class and out-of-class learning. You bring basically students' life into the classroom, so you mix both of the worlds of students outside class and in class, and you mix it, and it's amazing because it becomes very meaningful. It opens up spaces for discussion of motivations, learning preferences, and styles. We are very open as teachers to receive our students' comments and to listen to their needs and also help them in their learning process. It encourages students to take more personal responsibility for their learning because they become more autonomous, and it challenges the view that learning is equivalent to being taught. Now they are not there passively sitting doing nothing. They are actually being part of their own learning processes. In the 80s also, we have two concepts, which is the first one, learner-centered teaching, which is the one we are discussing, versus learner-directed teaching. You have to be very careful not to confusing these two concepts because they are very close in names. Learner-centered teaching is a teaching that is adapted to or takes into account learners' preferences and needs, while learner-directed teaching, the second one, is individualized teaching programs, tailor-made materials. Students work at their own pace. For example, mhm, as I was saying, students work at their own pace. It means that, as you know, there are some programs in education where they just give the materials to students and they have to study by themselves. And at some point, they have to present exams. And if they pass those exams, they start going through the subjects, the contents, until they are done with the program. This is done in elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, universities, etc. The thing is that learner-directed teaching, basically, there are a group of experts that develop programs, but also materials, but they make these materials, they adapt these materials and these programs to specific individuals. So it is a very personalized way of teaching and learning. Yeah, exactly. And there are, in the beginning of the 2000s, even though this was basically developed in the 80s, proposed in the 70s, developed in the 80s, there are a couple of principles that were proposed by Benson in 2003. And these 5 principles go according to the main proposal that I would like you to consider when you become teachers, especially speaking. So the first one is active involvement in student learning. The first principle discusses the importance on how students should be involved in their own learning. Yes, by being autonomous, yes, but also by proposing, participating, being active in class, um, understanding the importance of not only coming to class, sitting there and expecting to learn like out of nothing, thanks to magic, but being involved by being curious on the topics, doing more research, um, having conversations with others about the topics, reading, etc. Not only receiving what the teacher is saying or reading what the teacher is assigning, but going further. That's very important. The second principle, provide options and resources. Once you have discussed with your students the importance of involvement, autonomy, and being active, you provide the materials. But these materials should be very varied. They should be not only books, not only articles, not only websites, but all the different resources that you have available so students can have different options when it comes to learning, okay? Also, offer choices and decision-making opportunities. This is part of the humanistic approach. You offer choices in the sense of contents or materials. And once you present the choices, you allow them to make decisions. Because after all, it's their learning and they understand the importance on learning because they like being there, because they have purposes. So let them make decisions for themselves, by themselves. Support your students, support learners, not only in their learning, but also as humans. Sometimes they might need you. Sometimes they might need a smile. They might need some comfort. Um, Even if you just say, is everything okay? Do you want to talk to me? Is there anything I can do for you? It means the world for some people. And finally, encourage reflection, not only on certain topics about what you are teaching, which in this case is English, right? Like reflect on this, do this, think about this, but also remember that teaching languages goes with languages are very human, right? I've already mentioned that. But it's really important that you make them reflect on the world, on where they are standing, their environment, everything that is around them. Remember that school is basically, I believe that schools were created to get together, have interactions, learn contents, but basically become better human beings. So through some reading, through some listenings, through so many different things, you could encourage reflection on the world, on social problems, on everything that is in the world, so they become better. Okay. And also another part, another important other important aspects that you should consider in your classes as tasks or activities that actually contribute to learners and their teaching is give students more control over their learning, encourage them to make more choices and decisions, as I was telling you, give them a more active role in constructing knowledge in the classroom, encourage more student-student interaction, positive. Let's continue. I apologize for these inconveniences. Encourage more student-student interaction because through these interactions they share experiences and knowledge. Allow students to take on teaching and assessment roles. Encourage independent inquiry inside, outside the classroom. Bring out of class knowledge and learning into the classroom. Make learning more personally relevant to students that go through Students' needs encourage students to reflect on content and processes on teaching learning, and encourage students to prepare for active participation in class activities. All of these points they have been discussed previously, and I've given you a couple of examples. This is learner-centered teaching explained very briefly, but I would like to know your opinions on our following class, which is next Monday. I hope that you enjoyed this video. It's actually a not so hard topic to get, so I would like to hear your impressions next Monday, and we'll talk about it next class. Okay? Thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention, and see you in class. Bye bye.